Hey everyone! Ever get stuck staring at that spinning wheel of doom, just wishing your internet would get a move on? Well, today we're diving deep into something that might just be the answer to those slow internet blues: WAN aggregation.
Yeah, WAN aggregation.
Uh,
Sounds pretty techy.
it is, but we're going to break it down so everyone can understand. Basically, imagine merging a bunch of small internet pipes into one giant data superhighway.
Okay, I'm starting to get the picture. More bandwidth, more speed.
Exactly. And to guide us through all the nitty-gritty, we're using a YouTube video from DrayTek Australia and New Zealand as our source. Whether you're a tech guru or just someone who relies on the internet to, well, do basically everything these days, you're going to want to stick around for this one.
I'm in.
So let's set the scene. You're working on a project, deadline's looming, you need to upload huge files, or maybe you're running a cafe and the Wi-Fi is struggling to keep up with everyone online. That's where WAN aggregation comes in. But how does it actually work?
It's kind of like building a team of internet connections that all work together. Let's say you have a separate DSL connection and a 4G mobile internet connection. With WAN aggregation, you can use a special router to combine those two and get much faster speeds than either one could give you on its own.
So it's like the best of both worlds. But wouldn't that mean paying for two separate internet bills? Is that actually worth it in the end?
That's a really good question, and it really depends. Sometimes that boost in speed and having a backup if one connection drops is worth the extra cost, especially for businesses. Plus, some providers even offer packages specifically for WAN aggregation, so it's definitely worth checking out.
Okay, so it's not just about speed, but also about reliability. Speaking of which, the video mentioned something called session-based load balancing. What exactly is that, and how does it fit into all this?
Well, first you got to understand the OSI model, which is basically like a set of rules for how different parts of a network talk to each other, kind of like a layered cake. And the session layer is just one of those layers.
Okay, layers, got it. So where does the balancing come in?
Right, so session-based load balancing means that the router smartly directs each online activity, like browsing or downloading, to the fastest connection available at that moment. So it's not just randomly splitting your traffic, it's making sure each task gets the fastest route.
Ah, okay, so it's like having a traffic controller for your internet, making sure everything flows smoothly. Pretty cool. But the video also said you can't just plug the same modem into multiple ports and call it a day, right?
Exactly. You need distinct internet connections. Think of it like trying to get more water pressure by connecting two identical hoses to the same faucet. It just won't work. You got to have different sources, either from different ISPs or separate accounts with the same ISP. No cheating in the system.
Got it. No shortcuts here. The video actually showcased some pretty impressive DrayTek routers that handle this whole WAN aggregation thing. Are those the only routers that work?
They're well known for WAN aggregation and have a ton of different models, but they're definitely not the only ones out there. Other companies make routers with similar features.
So what should people look for if they're shopping for a router that can do this? Are there specific features that are must-haves?
Well, the most important thing is making sure the router actually supports WAN aggregation and can work with the types of internet connections you have. Some might be better for combining DSL with cable, while others might be great for fiber with 4G. So do your research.
Yeah, wouldn't want to buy a fancy router only to find out it doesn't work with your setup. Now, the big question, how hard is this to actually set up?
Surprisingly, it's often easier than people think. A lot of routers these days have easy-to-use interfaces that walk you through the process step by step.
Okay, so maybe I wouldn't need to call in a tech expert.
Well, depends how comfortable you are with tech stuff. But even if you're not, lots of companies offer tutorials and support to help you get things running.
That's reassuring. So we've talked about how WAN aggregation can potentially give you those super speeds by combining connections. But does it make things more complex? Are there any downsides to be aware of?
Right, good point. WAN aggregation isn't magic. It does have some potential drawbacks.
Like what? What should people be aware of before jumping on the WAN aggregation bandwagon?
One thing is that having multiple connections and a fancier router could mean more things that can go wrong. More points of failure. It's like a chain with more links. If one breaks, the whole thing is compromised.
So it's like a trade-off, potentially faster speeds and a backup, but also a slightly higher chance of something going wrong.
Yeah, exactly. You got to weigh those factors. Another thing is that not everything you do online will benefit equally from WAN aggregation.
So it's not like I'll magically see everything speed up across the board.
Right. Simple things like browsing the web or checking email might not see a huge difference. But for things that need a lot of bandwidth, like downloading huge files or streaming HD video, the difference can be massive.
Okay, now I see how this could be a total game changer for businesses that rely on high bandwidth stuff or can't afford any downtime. But is it practical for everyday users or is it mainly for businesses?
I think it's becoming more accessible to everyday users, especially those who live in areas with limited internet options, like rural communities or places with only one or two providers.
Oh, if you're stuck with slow DSL or spotty mobile internet, WAN aggregation could be a way to actually improve your situation.
Absolutely. By combining a couple of not-so-great connections, you could end up with a much faster and more reliable experience. Plus, with more people working remotely these days, having a rock-solid internet connection is essential, and this could be a way to get that extra level of reliability.
Yeah, it's like having an internet backup plan in case your main connection goes down. You mentioned earlier that the benefits are really noticeable for things like downloading large files or streaming HD video. Didn't the video have a good example of that?
Oh yeah. They combined a slower 5G connection, which was only getting something like 22 key download, with a wired Ethernet connection that was getting around 92 ps.
Okay, and what happened when they combined them?
They got a combined download speed of over 110 ps. That's the power of one aggregation right there.
Wow, that's pretty impressive. But even with those user-friendly interfaces you mentioned, I gotta admit I'm still a little intimidated by the setup. The video showed a setup process using a DrayOS 4 router, right?
Yeah, they did. And what's really interesting is that the process was surprisingly straightforward. You wouldn't believe how easy it was. Even if you're not a tech whiz, you could probably follow along.
Yeah.
Basically, you set your WANs to always on and load balance, then switch the load balance mode to session-based, and that's pretty much it.
Wait, seriously? That's all it takes? A few clicks and boom, you've got super speed internet.
It really shows how accessible this tech is becoming. It's not just for big companies anymore. It's a real solution for all kinds of businesses, remote workers, or anyone who just wants faster, more reliable internet.
This is giving me all sorts of ideas, especially for people in those areas with limited internet options. What was once a frustrating situation could become a real opportunity. But let's zoom out for a second. Where does this technology fit into the bigger picture of internet connectivity? What about the future?
And that's where things get really interesting. We were talking about all those possibilities, right?
Yeah,
Especially for those places with limited internet options.
yeah, exactly. But I'm thinking bigger now. What about the future of WAN aggregation? Where do you see it going?
Well, the thing is, we're just starting to scratch the surface of what WAN aggregation can really do. As internet speeds keep getting faster and faster and new technologies pop up, the possibilities are, well, pretty much endless.
Okay, now you've got me really intrigued. What kind of future are we talking about here? Give me the WAN aggregation-powered world tour.
Imagine reliable internet everywhere, even in the middle of nowhere. We could combine, say, satellite internet with cellular networks to give everyone, everywhere, a connection they can count on.
Wow, a world without dead zones. That's a game changer. Think about what that could do for things like education, healthcare, even just keeping in touch with people.
Absolutely. And it's not just about reaching remote areas. Imagine businesses being able to seamlessly blend high-speed fiber connections with like 5G backup so they're always online, no matter what.
So even if one connection goes down, they're still good to go. No more internet interruptions. Okay, that's huge for businesses, but what about us regular folks? How could this benefit us down the road?
Think about all the smart homes, self-driving cars, all those internet-connected devices. They're only going to need more and more bandwidth. WAN aggregation could be the key to making sure our home networks can actually handle all that.
So it's like future-proofing our homes, no more buffering or lag when everyone's streaming movies or playing games at the same time.
Exactly. And as those virtual reality and augmented reality things become more common, we're going to need even faster, more reliable internet to handle those. And WAN aggregation could be how we make it happen.
I'm already getting excited about all of this. But let's bring it back to reality for a second. For those listening who are thinking, okay, I'm sold, how do I actually try this WAN aggregation thing? What advice would you give them?
First things first, do your research. It's really important to understand the different types of WAN aggregation, what routers are out there, and if they work with your current internet connections. Don't jump in without knowing what you're getting into.
And where's a good place to start that research? Maybe that DrayTek website you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, that's a great place to start, especially if you're thinking about one of their routers. But I'd also suggest checking out some online forums, reading reviews, and looking at those websites that compare different brands and models. Get a good overview of what's out there.
That's a good point. It's always helpful to see what other people are saying about their experiences. Anything else people should keep in mind as they're exploring this whole WAN aggregation world?
Absolutely. Don't be afraid to reach out to the manufacturers directly or your internet provider for help and advice. They can often give you some really valuable insights and help you figure out the best option for you.
So true. Sometimes you just need to talk to a human who knows what they're talking about. You mentioned earlier that WAN aggregation can boost security and resilience. Can you unpack that a bit? How does it actually make our internet connections safer?
Well, think about it this way. With multiple internet connections, you've got backup. If one connection gets hacked or goes down, your traffic can just automatically switch to the other connection so you don't lose access and your data stays safe.
Ah, so it's like having a backup generator, but for your internet. That's a big deal for businesses, especially those dealing with sensitive information.
Exactly. And with cyber attacks becoming more and more common, having that extra layer of protection can really give you peace of mind. It's not just about speed anymore. It's about making a more resilient and secure digital world.
I totally see that. As we rely more and more on the internet for literally everything, it's so important to make sure our connections are secure and reliable.
Right. And WAN aggregation is a powerful tool to help us do just that. It's about moving beyond the limitations of single internet connections and building a future where access is dependable and powerful.
I love that vision. It's inspiring to think about how this technology can empower individuals, businesses, whole communities.
Absolutely. And I truly believe we're only just getting started. As we continue to innovate and discover new ways to use it, I'm confident WAN aggregation will play a huge role in shaping the future of how we connect with each other.
Well, I'm feeling pretty optimistic about the future of the internet after this conversation. WAN aggregation seems like a real game changer, not just for speed, but for reliability, security, and access.
I couldn't agree more. And the best part is we get to be a part of it. As more people discover the benefits of WAN aggregation and start using it, we can collectively create a more connected and resilient digital world.
Okay, folks, I think we've officially reached peak internet optimism here. But seriously, I'm walking away from this feeling incredibly energized about the future of connectivity. It's clear WAN aggregation isn't just some niche technology. It's a fundamental shift in how we think about accessing and using the internet.
Well said. I'm so excited to see how this technology evolves and shapes the world in the years to come.
Me too. But for now, I think it's time for us to disconnect from this amazing conversation and give everyone a chance to really think about what we've talked about today.
Great idea. Let those brains process all this amazing information.
Exactly. And who knows, maybe you'll be inspired to explore WAN aggregation for yourself and join the ranks of those pushing the boundaries of internet speed and reliability. All right, so as we wrap up our deep dive into this whole world of WAN aggregation, let's take a minute to recap what we've learned. We started with the basics, combining those internet connections, and now we're imagining a future where fast, reliable internet is everywhere. Pretty amazing stuff.
It really is.
Yeah.
And the coolest thing is that this isn't some far-off dream, You can actually use WAN aggregation right now, today, and start seeing the benefits.
Exactly. It's not just for tech geniuses or anything. So for our listeners who are thinking, all right, I want to try this, where would you recommend they start?
Well, if you're serious about diving in, go back to those resources we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
The DrayTek website is a great place to begin, especially if you're thinking about using one of their routers. But don't stop there. Check out online forums, read reviews, compare different brands and models. There's a ton of info out there.
Right. And don't forget, you can always reach out to the companies that make the routers or even your internet provider for some extra help and guidance. They can often give you some really valuable advice.
Absolutely. They're a great resource and can help you make sure you're choosing the right setup for your needs. And remember, you don't have to be a tech expert to use this. WAN aggregation is something that can empower anyone, businesses, individuals, even whole communities to get the internet access they deserve.
What strikes me about all of this is that it's not just about speed, it's about reliability, it's about security, and it's about breaking down those barriers to access. It's about a future where everyone can be a part of the digital world without limitations.
Couldn't have said it better myself. WAN aggregation has the power to be a real force for positive change. And it's super exciting to see how it's going to evolve and shape the future of how we connect with each other. Who knows what we'll be able to do with it in the years to come.
That's what's so cool about technology, right? Always pushing those boundaries and creating new possibilities. And that's where you, our listeners, come in. We want to hear your thoughts. What do you think about WAN aggregation? What are your predictions for the future of the internet? What other tech topics are you curious about?
Yeah, share your ideas, your questions, everything. Hit us up on social media, leave a comment on the episode page. We love hearing from you.
And that's it for this deep dive. Until next time, stay curious, stay connected, and keep those internet speeds blazing.